Let's take a closer look at the LCD display at the top panel of our phone and show you some interesting features that were not available before. First of all, you notice this particular phone, the top two lines are dedicated to me. Each of our phones has basically two lines that will either come in or go out, and that allows us to receive multiple calls. It also allows us to park calls, allows us to do conference calls, and some more advanced features and functions. So we have these two lines, line 1 and line 2. Okay. We also have other buttons here. We have 3 and 4, and we have down through 6 through 8. Now in my particular case, I decided to program my home, so I've speed dialed my wife at home if she's home, or anybody who may be at the house. I speed dialed Simon, I speed dialed George, or anybody else who I may want to add a important, just press the button and away you go at that point in time, so I don't have to fumble and try to figure out what their numbers are. By doing that also, you may notice up here in the right hand corner I have Simon plugged into or programmed into my my button. And there's also a green indicator. I mentioned before when we first chatted about the features and capabilities of the phone. That particular green button indicates, or that LED indicates, that that line is open or available. Now that doesn't mean Simon's actually in his office. What it means is he's not on the phone. Okay. So again, you could program these out, and there's a number of different features and capabilities, and we'll give you all a little card and some of those features and functions that you'll have access to at that point in time. All right. Also wanted to bring you down to the bottom where we have history. We have our phone book. You have what's called DND I have programmed in, and you have a menu button. Again, the reason it's toggling between the 3CX logo and this is the system, they don't want to burn the LCD display with it constantly being on with the same information all the time, kind of like a screensaver. Now the history button here, I wanted to just point out, if I depress the button at the bottom or below the history, what that's going to do is going to show me every phone call that I either had coming in or leaving. So in this case, you can see I have a string of CCG phone calls that I showed you just a moment ago how to make an outbound call, and I used CCG's number. If I want, I can simply go to this. Now I can scroll up and down to that using my navigation. I could scroll down using the buttons, and if I wanted to call CCG, I would simply, over here, I have a redial button, RD.
Calling CCG Marketing
And that's going to allow me to immediately call someone who either I called previously or who had called me previously, which is a great time saver. I don't have to think about it, or I would know the phone number simply by going into my history and then scrolling down to find a particular number. Okay. I could also go in here and I can delete numbers. If I wanted to delete a number, it would take it out of my phone book, and that's how you would build your phone book at that point in time. Also, there's the corporate phone book. So if I go to the 3CX phone book here and I go into, I could enter this, and that gives me everybody, basically it gives you the phone directory that Barbara gives us every month. Okay. Let's say, however, I didn't know what George's extension was, or I wanted to reach out to him at that point. I could search, and using the buttons, the keypad at the bottom, I would simply enter a G, E, and it would say George Grant at the bottom. I'd scroll down to George. At that point in time, I send. I'm just going to dial George on 2180. Okay, so again, that's pretty powerful. Now there's also some additional features and functions in there to add your own private phone book and do some other things, which we'll touch on in a little bit later. But I wanted just to make you aware that the company-wide phone directory is built into the system. Okay, we have another button over here. This one's currently programmed for DND. Now, if I do not want to disturb, and that's what that button is, DND, I would press that. Let's say I'm in a meeting. Simon's in my office. I have people in my office. I'm having a conference. I'm on a conference, whatever. I could simply press DND, and it's literally going to place my phone kind of unavailable to incoming calls. Okay. You can see at the top here, it indicates the LED display shows up here at the top that I'm offline. I'm in DND. Now, if I want, I could take that back off again. Now, I could program that DND so any inbound call will automatically go to my voicemail. I can have that DND any inbound call come in would report that I'm unavailable currently. At that point in time, it would either forward or I can have it go into a group. Now, a group we'll talk about in a little bit as well, and the group allows us to set up areas where inbound phone calls and other information that's coming into us via the phone can be placed into a holding area, almost like a conference room, if you will. Now, anybody who's assigned to that group now has access to that. So in this case, I could, if I'm in a meeting and I'm expecting an important phone call from a specific client, I could put DND, I could forward that inbound call to that group ID. That client could leave a number, or other people within that group would get a message, or their phone would ring telling them that there's an inbound call from that client that's now going into the group, and they can intercept it at that point in time. Pretty powerful stuff when you think about it. All right, last but not least, on this side, on the right-hand side, we have the menu button. The menu button gives us a lot of features, a lot of capabilities. So at this point, if I want to go into my various features, I select my call forwarding, my call waiting, auto answer. These are my DSS keys that we talked about. I can do my hotline, I can anonymous calls, I can do auto redial, DND as we just chatted about. I have an intercom system, which is actually pretty slick. Some of you may be interested in this feature. And what the feature does is it allows me to set up calls or people, so I can simply press the speed button at that point in time and call that person via intercom rather than physically having to call them. So if, as an example, if I'm working on a project with Stacy or with Karen or with Mary or whomever, we could literally set up a two-way system where I could simply press the button and I would have that person available to me, or they can do the same with me at that point in time. If I'm managing a project and someone needs to get a hold of me quickly, rather than call me, email me, or whatever, they can simply press the intercom button if I'm programmed that way, and they can immediately chat with me. Okay. So those are some of the features and functions within the menu. If I back out, I say OK. Let me go back to my call forwarding. Call forwarding allows us to identify, if I'm in a meeting, I can set that up and say always forward inbound calls. I could say if my line is busy, forward the call, yes or no. If there's no answer on my call on my phone, forward the call, yes or no. Now, if I turn that on and it says yes, forward that call, it's going to ask me where do you want to forward it to. So I can indicate my voicemail box or a group box or to some other phone. Okay. So that's, again, call waiting, call answering, on my auto answer, DSS keys. These are the the keys that we mentioned up here. It's in your booklet that I'll give you, and you can program your phones as well to anything that you may want to do. Finally, some people want to change their sounds. So let's go there. Go into settings mode. Go into basic settings. This time I could set my date and time, my display type, and sounds. My ringtones, I have common ringtones. So using the up-down button, you would literally select the ringtone that you want, and you would save it at that point. So now it's saving the new ringtone for me at that point. Okay. So then I would just back out of here, back, and then back out into my main screens. Again, pretty intuitive, pretty straightforward. You have the booklet. I'll also provide you some links to some quick reference guides at that point in time. If you have any questions, you'll let us know. Good luck.